The taxi pulled away, leaving Rebecca standing on a street corner she didn't recognize. Her phone screen was completely black, dead. Not just low battery, but completely dead. She pressed the power button again, hoping for a miracle, but nothing happened. She looked around, trying to get her bearings. This wasn't the part of town she usually drove through. The buildings here were older, some with broken windows covered by wooden boards. The sidewalks had cracks running through them like spider webs. A few people walked by, but nobody made eye contact. Everyone seemed to be in their own world. Rebecca had spent the entire afternoon at a business meeting across town. The meeting had run late, much later than she expected. By the time it ended, the sun was already starting to set. She'd grabbed the first taxi she could find, gave the driver her address, and then made the mistake of not paying attention to the route. She'd been too busy scrolling through emails on her phone until the battery finally gave up. When the taxi driver told her they'd arrived, she looked up and immediately knew something was wrong. This wasn't her neighborhood, not even close. But before she could say anything, the driver was already pulling away, probably rushing to pick up his next fare. Now she stood there, a successful real estate developer in a designer suit and expensive heels, completely out of place and utterly lost. The street was getting darker. Streetlights were starting to flicker on, though several of them were broken, leaving patches of shadow between the working ones. Rebecca clutched her leather bag closer to her side and tried to think. Which direction should she walk? Everything looked unfamiliar. She spotted a small convenience store across the street with its lights still on. Maybe she could ask for directions there, or use their phone to call someone. She started to cross the street when she noticed a figure sitting near an old storefront. It was a boy, couldn't have been more than 13 or 14 years old. He was sitting on a piece of flattened cardboard, his back against the wall of a building that had a for lease sign hanging crooked in the window. The boy wore a jacket that was way too big for him, the sleeves hanging past his hands. His jeans had patches on the knees, and his sneakers looked like they'd seen better days. Most people walking by didn't even glance in his direction. It was like he was invisible. But when Rebecca walked past, the boy looked up. His eyes were alert, watching her with a kind of awareness that seemed too old for someone so young. Rebecca hesitated. She wasn't sure who to ask for help. The convenience store was still an option, but something about the way the boy was watching the street made her think he might actually know the area well. "Excuse me," she said, her voice uncertain. She wasn't used to feeling uncertain. In her world of business deals and property negotiations, she always knew exactly what to say. But right now she felt completely out of her element. The boy stood up immediately. He wasn't tall, probably just under 5 feet, but he straightened his shoulders in a way that made him seem more present. "Yes, ma'am?" His voice was polite, respectful even. "I'm trying to get to the Riverside district. Do you know where that is?" The boy nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am. It's pretty far from here, though. Maybe 2 miles, could be more." Rebecca's heart sank. 2 miles in these heels? In the dark? Through neighborhoods she didn't know? The boy must have seen the worry on her face because he quickly added, "I can show you the way if you want. It's not too hard to find once you know the route." Rebecca studied him for a moment. He looked thin, like he hadn't eaten a proper meal in a while. His clothes were clean but worn. There was something about him that seemed genuine, though. Something in his eyes that made her believe he actually wanted to help. "You don't have to," she said, though relief was already washing over her. "It's okay," the boy said, already gathering up his cardboard and tucking it behind a dumpster, like he was saving his spot for later. "I don't have anywhere else to be right now." That statement hung in the air for a moment. No place to be. Rebecca thought about her own calendar, usually packed with meetings and appointments, every hour scheduled. This boy had nowhere to be. They started walking. The boy led the way, pointing out landmarks as they went. "See that church steeple? That's St. Anthony's. When you can see that, you know you're heading in the right direction." He walked with purpose, like he'd traveled these streets 1,000 times before. Rebecca tried to keep up, but her heels weren't made for this kind of walking. She stumbled on a broken piece of sidewalk, and the boy quickly reached out to steady her arm, then immediately pulled back like he wasn't sure if touching her was okay. "Sorry," he said. "Sidewalk's pretty rough around here. You gotta watch your step." "Thank you," Rebecca said, and she meant it. They walked in silence for a bit. Rebecca noticed how the boy kept a respectful distance, never getting too close, always staying slightly ahead to lead the way. He would glance back every few seconds to make sure she was still following. The neighborhood around them was quiet, except for the occasional sound of a car passing by or a dog barking in the distance. They passed a small park with rusty swing sets and a basketball court with no nets on the hoops. A few older men sat on a bench talking quietly among themselves. "How much farther?" Rebecca asked, her feet starting to hurt. "About halfway there," the boy replied. "There's a shortcut through the next block that'll save us some time." As they turned the corner, Rebecca realized she'd been unconsciously clutching her bag tighter. The boy had been nothing but helpful, but old habits and prejudices were hard to shake. She tried to relax her grip. The boy noticed. Of course he noticed. He didn't say anything, but something in his expression changed. Just slightly, like a door closing. They continued walking, but now there was a tension that hadn't been there before. Rebecca felt ashamed but didn't know how to fix it. How do you apologize for something you haven't said out loud? The street they turned onto was better lit, and Rebecca could see more familiar landmarks in the distance. She was getting closer to areas she recognized. "I think I can find my way from here," she said, stopping under a street light. The boy stopped too. He nodded but didn't say anything. Rebecca reached into her bag and pulled out her wallet. She opened it and took out a $20 bill. "Here," she said, holding it out with what she hoped was a friendly smile. "For your help." The moment those words left her mouth, she knew she'd made a mistake. The boy's face changed completely. It was like watching a light switch turn off. His eyes, which had been bright and helpful just seconds ago, went flat. He took a step back, putting distance between himself and the money Rebecca was holding out. "I don't want your money, ma'am." His voice was quiet but firm. There was hurt in it. Unmistakable hurt, even though he was trying hard to hide it. Rebecca stood there with her hand extended, the $20 bill suddenly feeling heavy in her fingers. She'd meant it as a thank you, a gesture of gratitude, but looking at the boy's face now, she realized how it must have looked to him, like payment for a service, like she was treating him as if he'd only helped her because he wanted money. "I didn't mean," Rebecca started to say, but the words felt hollow even as they left her mouth. The boy shook his head. "It's okay. You're close to where you need to be now. Just keep going straight for 3 more blocks, then turn left at the big intersection. You'll see the Riverside signs from there." He turned to walk away, his shoulders hunched in that too big jacket. Rebecca felt a twist in her chest, a mixture of embarrassment and something else she couldn't quite name. Guilt, maybe, or shame at her own assumptions. "Wait," she called out, but her voice came out uncertain, lacking conviction. The boy paused but didn't turn around fully. That's when a gust of wind blew down the street, strong enough to make Rebecca grab her jacket collar. The wind caught the boy's jacket too, and for just a moment it blew open. Rebecca saw something that made her throat tighten. Tucked carefully inside the boy's jacket was a book. Not just any book, but what looked like a school textbook, wrapped in a clear plastic bag, the kind of bag people use to protect things from rain or damage. The book was secured against his chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. The wind died down and the jacket fell back into place. The boy pulled it tighter around himself and started walking away again. "Wait, please," Rebecca called out again, this time with more urgency. "I'm sorry. That was rude of me." The boy stopped walking. He didn't turn around, but he stopped. Rebecca put the money back in her wallet, her hands shaking slightly. She didn't even know why she was shaking. "That book," she said, her voice gentler now. "Are you still in school?" For a long moment, the boy didn't respond. Then slowly he turned to face her. His jaw was set, his chin lifted with a kind of fierce pride that seemed both heartbreaking and admirable at the same time. "Haven't missed a single day in 3 years," he said. "Not one day. I'm in 8th grade. Honor roll." The words hit Rebecca like a physical force. This boy, dressed in clothes that had clearly been worn too many times, living in circumstances she was only beginning to understand, was going to school every single day. Honor roll. She thought about her own nephew, who had every advantage in life and still complained about having to go to school. She thought about the kids in her neighborhood who got driven to school in expensive cars and still cut classes. "Where do you live?" The question came out before Rebecca could stop herself. It was intrusive, too personal, but she needed to know. The boy's shoulders sagged a little. Some of that defensive pride melted away, replaced by something that looked like exhaustion. Right now, Memorial Park. There's a covered pavilion there. It stays pretty dry when it rains. Rebecca felt like the ground had shifted under her feet. Memorial Park? You're living in the park? It's not so bad, the boy said quickly, like he needed to defend his situation. There's bathrooms nearby that are open early in the morning. The community center opens at 6 and I can shower there before school. The library has outlets for charging my phone and quiet places to do homework. I've got it figured out. He was describing a survival system, a daily routine of just trying to make it through, and he was saying it like it was no big deal, like it was just how things were. Your parents? Rebecca asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. The boy looked down at his shoes. My mom passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. She fought it for a long time, but... His voice trailed off. My dad, he just couldn't handle it. He started drinking, a lot. I tried to help him, but he got worse. One day I came back from school and all our stuff was on the sidewalk. Evicted. Dad disappeared after that. I haven't seen him in about 8 months. He said all of this in a matter-of-fact tone, like he was reciting facts for a school report. But Rebecca could hear the pain underneath the words. The loss, the abandonment, all of it carried by a 13-year-old boy who was still somehow managing to get himself to school every day. 8 months? Rebecca repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. You've been on your own for 8 months? I manage okay, the boy said, that defensive pride creeping back into his voice. I know where the free meal programs are. The school counselor doesn't know about my situation, because if she did, they'd call social services. I'd end up in the system, probably move to a different school district. I can't let that happen. My school is a good school. The teachers actually care. If I can just make it to graduation, I can get scholarships. I can go to college. I want to be an engineer someday. An engineer. This boy who was living in a park, who had to carefully wrap his school book in plastic to protect it, who showered in community center bathrooms before dawn, had dreams of becoming an engineer. Rebecca thought about her own life. Her expensive apartment that she barely spent time in because she was always working. Her closet full of clothes she'd worn once or never at all. Her garage parking space that cost more per month than some people's rent. She'd built a successful career developing high-end properties. Luxury condos and shopping centers for people who already had everything they needed. And here was this boy who had nothing. Literally nothing. And he'd walked her almost 2 miles out of his way without asking for anything in return. He'd been offended by the offer of money, like his kindness was something that couldn't be bought or sold. The street around them had grown darker. Fewer people were walking by. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. The boy glanced in the direction of the sound, then back at Rebecca. I should get going, he said. It's safer to be settled in before it gets too late. No, Rebecca said suddenly. The word came out louder than she intended. I mean, please. Can I buy you dinner? Not charity, she added quickly, seeing him start to refuse. Just as a thank you. You helped me when I was lost, and I'd like to say thank you properly. Just dinner. That's all. The boy studied her face, trying to figure out if she was being genuine or if this was pity. Rebecca made sure to meet his eyes to let him see that she meant it. Finally, he nodded. Okay, just dinner, though. Just dinner, Rebecca agreed. There was a small diner 2 blocks away, the kind with vinyl booths and laminated menus and a bell that rang when you opened the door. The warm smell of coffee and fried food hit them as they walked in. The waitress, an older woman with tired eyes and a kind smile, showed them to a booth by the window. The boy ordered carefully, like he was doing math in his head, trying to pick things that weren't too expensive. Rebecca told him to order whatever he wanted, not to worry about the price. He ended up getting a cheeseburger, fries, and a chocolate milkshake. When the food arrived, he ate slowly, deliberately, like he was trying to make it last. Rebecca ordered coffee she didn't really want, just to have something to do with her hands. She watched the boy eat and felt something shifting inside her chest. A crack forming in walls she didn't even know she'd built around herself. They sat in that diner booth for over an hour, and slowly, the boy started to open up. It began with small things. He told Rebecca his name was Daniel. He talked about his favorite subject in school, which was math. He liked how numbers had clear answers, how if you followed the right steps, you could solve any problem. I'm good at it too, Daniel said, a hint of pride breaking through his usual guarded expression. My math teacher says I have a gift for it. She wants me to join the mathletes team next year when I'm in high school. Mathletes? Rebecca asked, genuine interest in her voice. Yeah, it's like a competition team for math problems. Schools compete against each other. Mrs. Rodriguez, she's my teacher. She says colleges really like to see that kind of stuff on applications. Daniel took a sip of his milkshake, and for just a moment, he looked like what he was, a regular 13-year-old kid enjoying a treat. Rebecca leaned forward slightly. You mentioned wanting to be an engineer. What kind? Daniel's eyes lit up. Civil engineer. I want to design buildings and bridges, things that help people. Safe places for families to live, roads that connect communities. He paused, seeming almost embarrassed by his own enthusiasm. I know it sounds silly coming from someone like me. Someone like you? Rebecca repeated. Someone who's homeless, Daniel said bluntly. Someone who can't even keep a roof over his own head, dreaming about building roofs for other people. The words hung heavy in the air between them. Rebecca felt that crack in her chest widening. It's not silly at all, she said firmly. It's one of the most sensible dreams I've heard in a long time. You understand what shelter means, what security means? That's not silly. That's purposeful. Daniel looked at her for a long moment like he was trying to decide if she really meant it. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out the book she'd seen earlier, still protected in its plastic bag. He carefully unwrapped it and set it on the table between them. It was a library book, Introduction to Engineering Principles. The cover was worn, and there were pencil marks on some of the pages where Daniel had clearly been taking notes in the margins. I check this out every 3 weeks, Daniel explained. That's the loan limit. I read it cover to cover, then I return it and check it out again. I've probably read it 5 times now. The librarian, Mr. Chen, he knows me. He saves new books about engineering for me when they come in. He doesn't know I'm homeless either. I always make sure I look clean when I go to the library. I don't want him to worry or report me to anyone. Rebecca picked up the book gently like it was something sacred. In a way it was. This was Daniel's future, wrapped in plastic and carried everywhere he went. Can I see your report card? Rebecca asked suddenly. You mentioned honor roll. Daniel hesitated, then reached into his backpack. He pulled out a folder, also protected in plastic. Everything he owned seemed to be carefully preserved, protected against the elements and the uncertainty of his daily life. He handed her a printed report card from the current semester. Rebecca scanned the grades. All A's, perfect attendance. Teacher comments that praised his work ethic, his curiosity, his helpfulness in class. One comment in particular caught her eye. It was from his English teacher. Daniel is one of the most determined students I've had in 20 years of teaching. Whatever he sets his mind to, I have no doubt he will achieve. Rebecca felt tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. She blinked them back. This is incredible, Daniel. You should be so proud of yourself. I don't really have a choice, Daniel said quietly. School is my only way out. If I mess up my grades, if I lose my chance at scholarships, then what? I'll be stuck like this forever, or worse. I see other kids on the streets, teenagers who dropped out, and I see where they end up. Drugs, crime, just lost. I can't let that be me. I won't. The determination in his voice was absolute. This wasn't just hope or a dream. This was survival strategy. Education was his lifeline, and he was holding on to it with everything he had. Rebecca thought about the properties she owned. She had a whole apartment building downtown, 12 units. She'd bought it as an investment 3 years ago, with plans to renovate and sell it for a profit. The project kept getting delayed because she was too busy with bigger deals, more lucrative projects. One of those apartments, the smallest one on the first floor, had been sitting empty for months. She kept meaning to list it for rent but never got around to it. That apartment had 2 rooms, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom with a working shower. It had heat and electricity and locks on the doors. It had everything Daniel needed and nothing he had. Rebecca set down the report card and looked at Daniel directly. How would you feel about not sleeping in the park tonight? Daniel's expression became wary. What do you mean? I own some properties around the city, Rebecca began carefully. She didn't want to make this sound like pity. She needed him to understand this was something else. One of them is an apartment building not far from your school. There's a unit there, small but decent, that's been sitting empty. I've been trying to figure out what to do with it. I told you I don't want charity, Daniel said, his walls going back up. I know. And this isn't charity. This is... Rebecca paused, trying to find the right words. This is me realizing that I've spent my whole career building expensive places for people who don't really need them. Meanwhile, there are people like you, people with actual dreams and determination who just need a stable place to sleep at night. You've been managing everything on your own for 8 months. Imagine what you could do with just a little bit of stability. Daniel was quiet, his hands wrapped around his milkshake glass. Rebecca could see him thinking, weighing the offer, trying to figure out the catch. What would you want in return? He asked finally. Keep going to school, Rebecca said simply. Keep getting those grades. Stay on that honor roll. Show up every day like you've been doing. That's it. That's what I want. I want to see what you can do when you're not worried about where you're going to sleep, or whether your stuff is going to get stolen, or whether you'll have a place to do your homework. Why would you do this? Daniel's voice cracked slightly. You don't even know me, Rebecca smiled sadly. You're right. I don't know you well, but I know enough. I know you're the kind of person who helps a lost stranger without expecting anything in return. I know you're the kind of person who protects library books like their treasure. I know you haven't missed a day of school in 3 years despite having every reason to give up. That tells me more about who you are than knowing you for years could. She leaned back in the booth, her coffee cold and untouched. And honestly, you're helping me too. I've spent so long focused on profit margins and property values that I forgot why I got into real estate in the first place. I wanted to create homes, real homes, places where people could build lives. Somewhere along the way I lost that. You're reminding me of it. Daniel's eyes were shining now, tears threatening but not quite falling. He was trying so hard to hold it together, to maintain that tough exterior that had kept him surviving for 8 months. I don't know what to say, he whispered. Say you'll think about it, Rebecca replied. Say you'll let me show you the apartment tomorrow. No pressure, no strings, just let me show you. Daniel nodded slowly. Okay, I'll look at it. The waitress came by to refill Rebecca's coffee and asked if they wanted dessert. Daniel looked at Rebecca questioningly. Get whatever you want, Rebecca said. Daniel ordered apple pie with ice cream. When it arrived, he ate it slowly, savoring every bite. Rebecca watched him and thought about how much she'd taken for granted in her life. How many meals she'd eaten without really tasting them. How many nights she'd slept in her comfortable bed without being grateful for the safety of locked doors and warm blankets. This boy had taught her more about gratitude in 2 hours than she'd learned in years. The next morning, Rebecca met Daniel at the corner near his school. He was there early, his backpack on his shoulders, looking cleaner than she'd expected. He must have gotten to the community center before dawn to shower and get ready. The dedication it must take to maintain appearances, to show up to school looking like any other kid when you'd spent the night in a park pavilion, was staggering. Ready to see the place? Rebecca asked, keeping her tone light and casual. Daniel nodded, but she could see the nervousness in his eyes. Hope was a dangerous thing when you'd learned not to count on anything. The apartment building was a 15-minute walk from Daniel's school. It was an older building, brick exterior with green trim around the windows. Nothing fancy but solid and well-maintained. Rebecca led him to the first-floor unit at the end of the hall. She unlocked the door and pushed it open. Daniel stepped inside hesitantly, like he was afraid the floor might disappear beneath his feet. The apartment was small. The main room served as both living room and bedroom, with enough space for a couch, a small bed, and maybe a desk. The kitchen was barely more than a galley, with a 2-burner stove, a half-sized refrigerator, and a few cabinets. The bathroom was tiny but functional, with a shower stall, toilet, and sink all crammed into a space not much bigger than a closet. To Rebecca, it seemed almost too small, barely worth renting out. But as she watched Daniel walk through it, she saw him see something completely different. He ran his hand along the kitchen counter. He turned on the faucet and watched the water run. He flipped the light switch in the bathroom several times like he couldn't quite believe it worked. He opened the closet door and just stared at the empty space inside. There's heat? He asked, his voice quiet. Yes, radiator heat. Gets warm pretty fast, actually. Daniel walked to the window and looked out. The view wasn't much, just the side street and the building across the way. But there was natural light and the window had a lock on it. The door has 2 locks, Rebecca said, pointing them out. A deadbolt and a chain lock. And there's a fire escape right outside the building, exits at both ends of the hall. Very safe. Daniel turned to face her. His eyes were wet and he wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. I could do my homework at that counter, he said, pointing to the kitchen. I could keep my books here. I wouldn't have to carry everything with me every day. Rebecca felt her own throat tighten. She hadn't even thought about that, about how Daniel had to carry everything he owned in his backpack every single day, because he had nowhere safe to leave anything. There's no furniture right now, Rebecca said. But I don't need much, Daniel interrupted quickly. Just maybe a mattress. I can sleep on the floor until… Daniel, Rebecca said gently. Let me help properly. A bed, a desk, some basic kitchen stuff. It's not charity. Consider it part of the apartment. I provide furnished or unfurnished units all the time. Daniel wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Why are you being so nice to me? People don't just do things like this. Rebecca sat down on the floor, her expensive business suit probably getting dusty, but she didn't care. She gestured for Daniel to sit too. After a moment's hesitation, he did. Can I tell you something? Rebecca said. I have a nephew. He's about your age, maybe a year younger. His name is Tyler. He goes to a private school, lives in a huge house, has his own room with a gaming computer and a TV and more clothes than he could wear in a month. And you know what? He cuts school. He complains about everything. He takes it all for granted. She paused, looking at Daniel. When his mom, my sister, tells him he needs to focus on school, he rolls his eyes. When she tries to talk to him about planning for the future, he says he doesn't care. And I see her heart break, watching this kid who has every opportunity waste them because he doesn't understand how lucky he is. And then I meet you, Rebecca continued. You have nothing, less than nothing. And you're fighting tooth and nail for every single opportunity. You're going to school every day. You're getting perfect grades. You're reading engineering books and dreaming about building things. You're doing all of this on your own without parents pushing you, without anyone telling you that you have to. She shook her head, a sad smile on her face. You asked why I'm being nice to you. Maybe the better question is, why isn't everyone being nice to you? You're exactly the kind of person who deserves help. Not because you're helpless, but because you're already helping yourself and just need someone to meet you halfway. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, My mom used to say something. She'd say that life isn't about waiting for someone to save you. It's about saving yourself one day at a time, and if you're lucky, you'll meet people along the way who want to walk beside you for part of the journey. Your mom sounds like she was a wise woman, Rebecca said softly. She was, Daniel agreed. She worked 2 jobs to keep us fed. Even when she got sick, she kept working as long as she could. She made me promise her something before she died. She made me promise I wouldn't give up on school no matter what happened. She said education was the one thing nobody could take away from me. And you've kept that promise, Rebecca said. Every single day, Daniel replied. Even when it's hard, even when I'm tired or hungry or cold, I think about her and I keep going. They sat in that empty apartment on that dusty floor and Rebecca made a decision. This wasn't just about giving Daniel a place to sleep. This was about something bigger, something she was only beginning to understand. Here's what I'm thinking, Rebecca said. This apartment is yours. We'll get it furnished this week. Basic stuff, bed, desk, dishes, a few groceries to get you started. But I also want to set up something else. A trust account, small monthly allowance for food and necessities. Not a lot, just enough so you're not worried about where your next meal is coming from. Miss Rebecca, Daniel started to protest. Let me finish, she said gently. In exchange, I need something from you. I need you to keep doing what you're doing. Keep going to school. Keep getting those grades. But I also need you to let me be part of your life. Not as charity, but as, think of me as a mentor. Or a friend. Someone who cares about how you're doing. She looked at him seriously. Here's the thing, Daniel. I have resources. I have connections. I know people at universities. I know about scholarship programs. When the time comes for you to apply to colleges, I can help you navigate that. I can write recommendations. I can connect you with people who can help. But most importantly, Rebecca continued, I need you to understand that accepting help doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart. The strongest people I know are the ones who recognize when they need support and aren't too proud to accept it. Daniel was crying openly now, not bothering to hide it. I've been so tired, he admitted. It's so hard doing everything alone. Making sure I wake up on time with no alarm clock, finding places to eat, keeping my clothes clean, staying warm, staying safe. Sometimes I'm so tired I can barely think straight in school, but I can't stop. I can't give up. You won't have to do it alone anymore, Rebecca said. She reached out and squeezed his shoulder. I'm here now. We're in this together. Daniel nodded, unable to speak. They sat there for a few more minutes, both of them processing what this meant. This unexpected connection that had formed between a successful businesswoman and a homeless 8th grader. Finally, Rebecca stood up and offered Daniel her hand. He took it and she pulled him to his feet. Let's go get you some furniture, she said. And then we'll go grocery shopping. You need real food, not just whatever you can get from free meal programs. I have school, Daniel said, glancing at his watch. I can't miss one day, Rebecca said. Just this once. We'll call the school, explain you have an appointment. Your perfect attendance will survive one excused absence. Besides, this is important. Getting you settled is important. Daniel looked torn. His commitment to never missing school was clearly at war with the practical need to get his new life set up. Finally, he nodded. Okay, just today. They spent the day shopping for furniture and supplies. Rebecca watched Daniel's face as they picked out a bed frame and mattress, a desk with good lighting for homework, a small dresser for clothes. She took him to a department store and let him pick out new clothes, enough for a proper week's worth. Socks, underwear, jeans, shirts, a warm jacket that actually fit him properly. At the grocery store, Daniel was overwhelmed by choices. He kept gravitating toward the cheapest options until Rebecca gently steered him toward better quality. Fresh fruit, vegetables, real meat, bread that wasn't the bargain brand, milk and cereal for breakfast, ingredients for actual meals. By the time they got back to the apartment with everything, it was late afternoon. They spent the evening setting everything up. Rebecca wasn't handy with furniture assembly, but she and Daniel figured it out together, laughing at their mistakes and celebrating their successes. When they finished, the small apartment looked like a home. A modest home, but a real one. Daniel stood in the middle of it, turning in a slow circle, taking it all in. I get to stay here? He asked, like he still couldn't quite believe it. You get to stay here, Rebecca confirmed. This is your home now, Daniel. Your home. 3 years passed. 3 years that changed everything. Rebecca found herself spending more time with Daniel than she'd ever imagined possible. What started as providing him with a place to live evolved into something neither of them had expected. It became a real relationship, something like family, but not quite fitting any traditional definition. She'd show up at his apartment unannounced sometimes, bringing groceries or just to check in. They'd have dinner together, Daniel telling her about his classes, his teachers, the projects he was working on. Rebecca found herself actually caring about 8th grade algebra and high school physics in ways she never had when she was that age. Daniel kept his promise. He didn't just maintain his grades. He excelled beyond anyone's expectations. He joined the mathletes team and helped lead them to regional championships. He took advanced placement classes in math and science. He volunteered as a tutor for younger kids struggling with homework. But more than his academic achievements, Rebecca watched him grow as a person. The defensive walls he'd built around himself slowly came down. He laughed more easily. He made friends. He joined the robotics club. He went to his first school dance, nervous and excited, wearing a suit Rebecca had helped him pick out. There were hard days, too. Days when the trauma of losing his mother would hit him out of nowhere. Days when he'd see someone who looked like his father on the street and go quiet for hours. Days when the fear of losing his new stability would creep in, and he'd ask Rebecca repeatedly if she was sure, really sure, that he could stay in the apartment. I'm sure, she'd always say. This is your home. That's not changing. And slowly he began to believe it. Rebecca's life changed too in ways she hadn't anticipated. She started thinking differently about her work. That apartment building where Daniel lived, she decided not to sell it after all. Instead, she renovated the other units and began renting them at below-market rates to families who needed affordable housing. People like Daniel, people who were working hard but couldn't afford the inflated rents that dominated the city. She partnered with local nonprofits, creating a program to help homeless youth transition into stable housing. She used her business connections to create job training programs. She started attending city council meetings about affordable housing, using her voice as a developer to advocate for policies she once would have opposed because they cut into profit margins. Her sister noticed the change. You're different, she said one day over coffee. Happier. More present. I found something I'd lost, Rebecca replied. Purpose. Her nephew Tyler met Daniel once. It was awkward at first. Tyler with his designer clothes and expensive phone, Daniel in his simple jeans and thrift store shirt. But then Daniel helped Tyler with his math homework, patiently explaining concepts Tyler's expensive tutors couldn't get through to him. By the end of the evening, Tyler looked at Daniel with something like respect. "He's cool," Tyler told Rebecca later. "He's really smart." "He is," Rebecca agreed. "And he worked hard to get there." She hoped Tyler understood what she was really saying. That intelligence and success weren't just given. They were earned. Now, 3 years after that night when Rebecca got lost in an unfamiliar neighborhood, she sat in a high school auditorium filled with proud parents and family members. The graduates were filing in, wearing caps and gowns, their faces a mixture of excitement and nervousness about the future ahead. Rebecca spotted Daniel in the line. He'd grown taller in the past 3 years, filled out, looked healthier. But it was his face that had changed the most. The hardness that had been there that first night was gone, replaced by something softer, more open. He looked like what he was, a bright, hopeful 17-year-old about to start the next chapter of his life. The ceremony began. Rebecca sat through speeches from the principal and the valedictorian, the handing out of diplomas, the traditional moving of tassels from right to left. But what she was waiting for came near the end. The principal returned to the microphone. "Every year we recognize one student who has demonstrated exceptional character, perseverance, and dedication to their education. This year's recipient of the Outstanding Achievement Award has overcome more obstacles than most of us will face in a lifetime. He maintained a 4.0 grade average while working part-time, volunteering in the community, and serving as captain of our mathletes team." Rebecca sat up straighter, her heart beginning to race. "He will be attending State University in the fall on a full academic scholarship, where he plans to study civil engineering. Please join me in congratulating this year's Outstanding Achievement Award recipient, Daniel Rodriguez." The auditorium erupted in applause. Daniel walked to the stage, and Rebecca could see him trying to keep his composure, but his eyes were shining. He accepted the award, shook hands with the principal, and then turned to the microphone. "Thank you," he said, his voice stronger than Rebecca remembered from that first night. "This award means everything to me because I know what it represents. It's not just about grades or test scores. It's about not giving up even when giving up seems like the only option." He paused, looking out at the audience. Rebecca knew he was looking for her, and when their eyes met, he smiled. "3 years ago, I was in a dark place," Daniel continued. "I'd lost my mom, lost my home, lost everything that made me feel safe in the world. I was angry at life, at circumstances, at everything. But then something happened that changed everything." He gripped the award in his hands. "I met someone who was lost. She needed help finding her way, and I helped her. It was such a small thing, just showing her the right direction to walk. But that small act of kindness opened a door I didn't even know was there." Rebecca felt tears starting to form. Around her, people were completely silent, hanging on every word. "That person became my mentor, my supporter, and my friend," Daniel said. "She gave me a home when I had none. She gave me stability when everything felt uncertain. But more than that, she gave me something I'd forgotten existed: hope. She showed me that even when the world feels cruel and unfair, there are still people who care. There are still people who see value in others, who are willing to help without asking for anything in return." He looked directly at Rebecca now. "Miss Rebecca, if you're listening, I want you to know something. You think you saved me that night. But the truth is, I think we saved each other. You were lost in a neighborhood you didn't know. I was lost in a life I couldn't control. We found our way together." The tears were flowing freely down Rebecca's face now. She didn't care who saw. "To everyone here today," Daniel continued, "I want you to remember something. Kindness matters. It really truly matters. You never know when a simple act of helping someone might change the entire course of 2 lives. You never know who might be struggling behind a brave face, who might need just one person to believe in them to turn everything around." He held up his award. "This award has my name on it, but it really belongs to everyone who helped me get here. My teachers who saw potential in me when I couldn't see it in myself. My friends who accepted me without judgment, and especially to the woman who took a chance on a kid who had nothing to offer except a willingness to work hard and a dream of something better." He paused, emotion thick in his voice. "I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to design buildings and bridges. places where people can feel safe and secure, and every single thing I build will be built with the memory of what it feels like to have nowhere safe to go. Every structure I design will be created with the understanding that shelter isn't just about walls and roofs. It's about dignity. It's about hope. It's about having a place where you can close the door and know that you're home. The applause started again, but Daniel held up his hand, not quite finished. One more thing, he said. If you're out there and you're struggling, if you're barely holding on, if you feel like nobody sees you or cares about you, please don't give up. Keep showing up. Keep trying. Keep being kind even when the world hasn't been kind to you, because you never know when your life is about to change. You never know when the person who will change everything for you is about to walk into your life. He stepped back from the microphone as the entire auditorium rose to their feet in a standing ovation. Daniel made his way back to his seat, and Rebecca watched him go, her heart so full she thought it might burst. After the ceremony, Daniel found her in the crowd of families and friends. Without saying a word, he wrapped her in a tight hug. Rebecca hugged him back. This boy who wasn't her son but felt like family nonetheless. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "I couldn't have done it without you," Daniel replied. "Yes, you could have," Rebecca said firmly, pulling back to look at him. "You were already doing it. I just gave you a place to rest while you did." They walked out of the auditorium together into the bright June sunshine. Daniel's whole future was ahead of him. State University in the fall, engineering program, internships, and eventually a career doing what he'd always dreamed of. But right now, in this moment, none of that seemed as important as the simple fact that he'd made it. He'd survived. He'd thrived. He'd turned pain and loss into purpose and determination. "What are you thinking about?" Rebecca asked as they walked toward her car. "I'm thinking about that night," Daniel said. "When I first met you, how you were lost and scared in my neighborhood, and how I almost didn't help you because I was used to people not seeing me, not caring about me." "What changed your mind?" Rebecca asked. She'd never thought to ask before. Daniel smiled. "You looked at me. Really looked at me. Most people look through me like I'm invisible, but you looked at me like I was a real person who might actually be able to help you. That sounds like such a small thing, but it wasn't. It made me feel human again." Rebecca thought about that, about how something so simple, just making eye contact and seeing someone's humanity, could mean so much. "You know what I learned from you?" Rebecca said. "I learned that I'd been lost too, not in the way you were lost, but lost in a different way. I'd lost my purpose, my connection to why I did what I did. I'd become so focused on success and profit that I'd forgotten about people. You reminded me." They reached the car, but neither of them moved to get in. "The day was too beautiful, the moment too important to rush. I've been thinking," Daniel said. "When I finish college, I want to start a foundation. Something to help kids like I was. Not just with housing, but with mentorship, with connections, with someone to believe in them." "That's a wonderful idea," Rebecca said. "And I'd like to help with that if you'll let me." "Of course," Daniel said. "We're partners, remember? We found our way together." Over the next 4 years, while Daniel was in college, Rebecca kept her promise. They met regularly for dinners, for check-ins, for conversations about life and future plans. She watched him excel in his engineering program, saw him gain confidence, saw him become the man he was meant to be. He interned at prestigious firms. He won awards for his designs. He stayed humble and kind, never forgetting where he came from or how far he'd traveled. When Daniel graduated from college, Rebecca was there again, sitting in another auditorium, watching another ceremony. This time he graduated summa cum laude, with multiple job offers waiting for him. But before accepting any of them, Daniel did something else first. He and Rebecca officially launched the foundation they'd been planning, the Daniel and Rebecca Foundation for Youth Empowerment. It provided housing assistance, mentorship programs, and scholarship opportunities for homeless youth trying to stay in school. The foundation's first initiative was renovating an apartment building, the same building where Daniel had lived, the same building that had been his first real home in years. They turned it into transitional housing for teenagers who'd aged out of foster care or lost their families. Each unit came with support services, tutoring, and most importantly, someone who believed in them. On the day they cut the ribbon at the grand opening, Daniel stood next to Rebecca, now a college graduate and licensed engineer, looking at the building that had changed his life. "We did this," he said softly. You did this, Rebecca corrected. I just helped. No, Daniel said firmly. We did this together. Just like everything else. The truth is, neither of them could have predicted that night 3 years ago would lead to this moment. Rebecca couldn't have known that getting lost in an unfamiliar neighborhood would help her find her purpose. Daniel couldn't have known that helping a stranger would lead to him helping hundreds of others in similar situations. But that's how kindness works. It spreads in ways we can't predict or measure. One act of compassion creates ripples that touch lives we'll never even know about. Rebecca learned that being truly rich has nothing to do with bank accounts or property values. It has everything to do with connection, with purpose, with making a difference in someone else's life. She'd spent years building things, but until she met Daniel, she'd never built anything that really mattered. And Daniel learned that accepting help isn't weakness, that letting someone care about you doesn't make you less strong or capable, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone walk beside you for part of your journey. They both learned that life can change in an instant. One chance meeting, one moment of kindness, one decision to help instead of walking past can alter the course of 2 lives forever. Years later, when Daniel designed his first major building, a mixed-use development with affordable housing integrated alongside market-rate units, he invited Rebecca to the groundbreaking ceremony. Standing there with the shovel in his hands, Daniel said, "This building will house over 200 families. Some will pay full rent, some will pay subsidized rent, but they'll all have the same quality of construction, the same safety standards, the same dignity, because everyone deserves a home." Rebecca watched him break ground on his dream and thought about that scared, thin boy she'd met on a street corner so many years ago. The boy who'd protected his library books in plastic bags and dreamed of building safe places for people to live. He was building them now. He was making his dream real, and she'd been lucky enough to witness it, to be part of it, to see how one moment of connection could blossom into something neither of them could have imagined. Sometimes we think that changing the world requires grand gestures or enormous resources. But the truth is, the world changes one small kindness at a time. One person seeing another person's humanity. One individual choosing to help instead of walking past. One act of compassion creating space for hope to grow. Daniel helped a lost woman find her way home that night. And in doing so, he found his own way home too. Not just to a physical place with walls and a roof, but to a future full of possibility. Surrounded by people who believed in him, and Rebecca, who thought she was just looking for directions to a familiar neighborhood, found something far more valuable. She found meaning. She found purpose. She found a reason to use her resources for something that truly mattered. Their story reminds us that we never know whose life we might change with a simple act of kindness. We never know who might be watching, who might be struggling, who might need exactly what we have to offer in that moment. So be kind. Be compassionate. Be willing to see the humanity in others, especially those who society has taught us not to see. Because sometimes the person you help might turn out to be the one who helps you understand what life is really about. And sometimes getting lost is exactly what we need to find our way home.